Right. We're back. We're actually here making a second podcast for all your lovely faces after a fantastic response on the first one. Today, I'm joined by the usual culprits, Tony Harris, Duncan Jones, Tom Saunders and Josh Page, who I can confirm has finally put the ball in the bin, and it's actually quite a decent shot. So we'll just insert that here. If you haven't realised already, I've inspired by Tony. I've chopped all the hair off. Dunk's still rocking an Ibra look, but it absolutely shows off his nose more than ever. But while we're on the topic of haircuts, I'd like to go and introduce our two guests for today. Our first one is Mr. Pot Noodle himself, although he looks a bit more like one of those dogs with flappy ears this morning, and that is Jon-Jo Wright. How are you, John?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you, Bradley. Not too bad.
Good. And then second, we have Mr. Harvey Fletcher, our all-round lovely guy. I mean, he hasn't done too much to his excellence, so I can't really comment on your hair. It just looks lovely as ever.
I've had a shave.
Oh, there you go. That's it then. That's how we'll leave it to you. Anyway, we're going to crack on. The podcast today, we're focusing on what it's like to coach as a parent. But before we get into that, I'd just like to mention a couple of things when Tone and Dunk, if you'd like to put a little bit of input about the awards evening. Just we've had a couple of questions on that and what our sort of views are at the moment with what's going to happen.
Yeah, you want this, Dunk, or do you want me to do it?
You go.
I don't know, Bradley, is my answer to you, mate. So at the moment, we're penciled in for the 28th of June. It's still booked, but obviously with the current climate, no one knows when we'll be back up to normal. So I would say that date is likely to change. We will at some point have an awards evening / season celebration, but it will just come out once we know more information. It's going to be a mad last minute panic, I assume, in terms of once we get the all clear to organise things and get back socialising, but we'll just keep everyone updated as we go. So my short answer, Brad, is like I said at the beginning, I don't know.
Fair enough. We're going to then move on to sort of the topic of today. And I just want to ask John and Harv to start with, what got you into coaching in the first place? Go on, Harv, you can start.
Well, I suppose because I've been around Pass+Move since it really started, because Harry's been there and been playing. I didn't really want to do too much coaching at the beginning because I was still playing and stuff like that. But obviously you watch Tony and all the other coaches, and it is enjoyable to be around. And I think, was it about 3 or 4 years ago, we needed a coach for a Saturday team. Tone, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I just basically put my hand up, really, stupidly. And that's how I got into it. But to be fair, I've loved every minute of it. It's been good. It's been really good fun. But that was how it's really started for me.
You've loved every minute of it?
That is a bit of a lie.
Depends who I'm playing. There's one particular team that I'd like to have some fun with, but it's the way it goes, isn't it? We just try and do what we can and make sure the kids enjoy it. That's the main thing of what we've got to try and achieve. And it's nice if you win, score goals, but I think the main thing is just get the kids to score goals, because that's what they remember at a young age anyway. That's what I think. They don't necessarily remember the result. They just remember that they've scored. Pretty much it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
John G?
To be fair, I think it's mainly to do with Tom, to be fair.
No, don't give him any credit at all on this
I don't know if
cast.
it's credit or not, but obviously Franklin started. He was doing like the reception training, and then was looking to get into obviously sign on for the teams and stuff. And I was finishing work and taking him to training, watching him training and stuff. And I see Tom. Some sessions you had like sort of like 30 odd kids to yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a bit mad.
And I got roped in as one being that sort of awkward parent, just sort of throwing balls in willy-nilly, and then he asked me, and I thought about it. And to be honest, I wasn't actually going to do it because I thought, the commitment and obviously being self-employed, running my own business, I thought I wouldn't be able to manage it. But
what's your business called, Jon-Jo?
Right Plumbing and Heating, 079.
Keep going, mate. That's another £100 sponsorship next season.
I should have worn it today, to be fair. But no, I sort of give it a go, and it's one of those things where I knew if I said I'd do it, I couldn't then go back on it. I knew like if once I said I'd get involved, I'd be in it with the long run. And in some ways, it's something I haven't really looked back on. I sort of really enjoyed it. It has been times, like I think the boys said last week, sometimes you get up at sort of 6 o'clock on a Saturday and a Sunday, and you do think to yourself, bloody hell, what am I doing here? But most of the time, it's been good, and yeah, it's something what I've really glad I got into, and hopefully I can carry it on for as long as Franklin's playing football at the very least, and see where it takes us.
Yeah. So you mentioned Franklin there, and sort of we just want to ask a couple of questions. I can go to Tone and Dunk on this as well. And it's just, do you find it difficult coaching your own child? It's like you don't want to be biased towards them, or in fact the other way around in that sense. So Dunk.
There's two sides to this for me, I suppose, because when I first started, I was coaching Harry, my nephew, and obviously Tony's boy Alfie in that side. So I suppose I'm quite fortunate where now I'm coaching little Jonesy, who's in the under sevens. I've had that kind of, I say, guinea pig trial with Harry and Alfie. So I've kind of slowly learned from the mistakes that I've made with Harry and Alfie on coaching them, the do's, the don'ts, in what's the best way to get the best and get Jonesy to enjoy his football as much as possible, especially when you're looking at my little lad, who's probably not one of those lads who's, you know, an absolute loon for football yet. So I've been able to take the lessons from Harry and Alfie and approach Cole in a slightly different way, and not to push him too much, how to get him to engage in football, when to leave him alone, when to like push him to go out there and play a bit more. So I've been fortunate enough in that I've had that period with Harry and Alfie first off, which, if I'm honest, was at times incredibly enjoyable, always incredibly enjoyable, but yeah, difficult as well at times. There's many a moment where we've struggled with frustrations with it all, and how much we should be encouraging, how much we should be teaching, and most of all, just trying to make sure they enjoyed their football. I mean, Tone, there's a few. What's your kind of take on it, Tone?
It was difficult at the beginning, especially because we came from coaching men's football, so you come from a different mindset when you're coaching adults to coaching under sixes, under sevens, and I've always been, and I think I still am, overcritical with my lad. And I'm probably the first to admit that I don't like to show many favouritism, I go the other way, and I'm a little bit harsher with him than I probably am with anyone else, and not badly, but just in terms of it's just how it is. And whenever I look at equal playing time, in the beginning especially, he was probably one of the ones that maybe suffered a bit more, and now struggled a little bit to get going with football. He didn't quite enjoy it as much, really, and I think certainly first year he played because of me, because I loved football, and that's why he was coming along a lot of the time. But he's grown into it. He loved it. I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning in terms of how I was with him, bringing it home and things like that. When you look at all the FA, you do your FA badges and you hear stories from how you should be with parents, and I'm there sat there going, yeah, that's me as a parent. So I've reflected quite a bit over the last 7 years. I'd like to think I'm a lot better with it now, but yeah, still make mistakes with it. I think it's the same. We're quite fortunate as a club. We've got a lot of parents that coach, and without them, we wouldn't have the number of teams we've got. We wouldn't be able to give the number of kids we have a game of football. We're all learning. Whatever experience you've got, whatever coaching experience, skill base you've got, or qualifications you've got, you still learn. And there's lots of stuff that I do personally that I look back going, oh, shouldn't have done that. It's just, yeah, there's some stuff I'm not prepared to share on here. So
yeah, that's why I was incredibly uneloquent when I was talking about it, because you're thinking about what's okay to say and what's not okay to say.
Yeah,
but I think
it is difficult.
When I'm looking at little Jonesy, I mean, Josh, you've been party to a lot, and I think the way I do it with Cole now, it's a case of if he's on the pitch and if he's if he's taking part, if he's getting involved, if he looks like he's enjoying himself, even if he's technically behind the other lads, but he's on there and he's participating, then you leave him on there to get involved and to try and enjoy his football. Because as we always say, if you've got a ball at his foot, they'll improve and they'll develop. But then if he falls into that mindset where I look at him and I think, I don't think you want to be on there at the moment, then that's the point where I say, right, off you come, little man, because especially when you've got other lads on there, however much you want to do equal playing time, but you've got other lads on the side who want to be on the pitch. So it's finding that balance with a little lad with Cole. When I look at the Harry and Alfie situation, we've learned so much from that. Perfect example, Fletch, is Harry, where he was at first, when Harry started out, he wanted to be in goal and he was a fantastic little keeper. But if we were addressing that situation now, where at that age we don't have specialist keepers at that age, it probably would have prevented a lot of the issues with Harry, where he wasn't playing on pitch as much. We weren't working on his footwork as much as we should do. I mean, now our keepers are sweeper keepers, and you see the way we play. But so that had an impact on Harry's development early on. But now that's something we've learned from, and doesn't happen with the youngsters now. Even if they do say, "I want to be in goal, I want to be in goal," we handle it a completely different way.
Did you want me to say something on that?
No.
Yeah, I think that was a big turning point with Harry as well, when he decided, because what was it? I don't know. It's probably about 4 or 5 years ago that he just weren't happy being a goalkeeper. He wasn't enjoying it, and it was just that was a crossroads for Harry. He had to decide what he wanted to do, whether he wanted to try and push on with his playing and do every coaching session and do everything to develop quicker, or just go there to enjoy his football. I mean, I come from a big footballing family, and the way I treat Harry is totally different to the way I was treated, whereas I would just not push him in any way. If he wants to commit to something, then I will say, right, you've got to be there every week, you've got to do your training, you've got to put the miles in to become better if you want to become better. So I'm not a pushy Perry in that respect. I think I'm slightly bit of an opposite to Tony, whereas Harry will get equal game time as everyone else, but when we walk off the pitch, we might do a little bit of an analysis on what he did, what he could have done better, but it's never. I'm trying not to be too harsh on him because he's still learning the game and he's still trying to develop as a player. So that's what I try and do as a parent. But I don't think you've got to do that with every child that you're trying to develop as a coach, especially with our age group now, Tone. They're basically little men. So they're always going to test a bit of authority and they're always going to try things. But, you've just got to treat them all as individuals. It's not just, I think it's not too bad coaching my son, if I'm honest, because I just let him get on with it. Just let him get on with it and just let him enjoy it and smile, and that's it.
I've got to be honest at the moment, and there's no point doing this podcast if we're not frank and honest about it. If I'm looking at coaching Cole's under sevens, I absolutely love it. I love coaching that side. I love working with those kids. They're an absolute pleasure. But I would be absolutely lying through my teeth if I didn't say it. At times, I find it incredibly stressful, trying to manage your own child, who at times is running at me to ask me if he can have a biscuit, as opposed to, concentrating on the football. Dad, can I have a biscuit? Can I have a biscuit? Usually when I'm trying to ref a game and I'm trying to manage subs from the sidelines, I'm trying to make sure that he's getting the most out of his football. I'm trying to make sure the kids on the sidelines are getting the right amount of playing time. You're trying to ref and concentrate on the game at the same time, so the opposition don't think you're an absolute idiot. At times it's a hell of a lot to deal with. But on the flip side of that, and I can think of 3 different occasions here, you have those moments of absolute pride. So if we're looking about Harry, one of the earliest ones I remember with Harry Fletch was the game at Westfield when he was in goal. We were playing Sedlescombe, and Sedlescombe had been battering us 9, 10, 11 nil when we first started out. And he had this game in goal. The side played well anyway as a side, but Harry had this game in goal where he was absolutely immense. And I can remember I was reffing it, and the pride you got from that. I can remember Bulverhive time with Alfie, the first time Alfie scored, and Kath, we had to hold it. Kath ran on the pitch, and I was standing there. We were all standing there because we'd all had that journey with the lads as well. And that moment of pride there is unbelievable. And then with Jonesy.
When you watch his mother run on the pitch, that moment of pride evaporates.
Alfie's running the other way.
And then with little Jonesy, he's right at the start of his journey. But even the week when they played on the Astro against DNS Battle, and all he didn't do much. It wasn't a massive thing that he did, but he put the ball under control. He got his head up. He saw the opposition and he picked out a beautiful pass through to one of his teammates in front of goal. And I was with you, Harv, at that point. And I remember you saying to me, worth coming just to see that. And that moment where he's come from, in that mindset where he's just treating the ball like a hot potato, and he's taken on board what we've been saying, and he controlled the ball, he got his head up, and he passed the ball through two players to one of his mates who was throwing goal. And you know what? The pride you feel, God knows what I'm going to be like when he sticks one in the net. So I don't know. It's
we can celebrate that with his 21st.
I'm about to say it now.
I think we all know as coaches, we all have an idea on how it should be done, and it's we all have that same ethos. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing what we do, and the club wouldn't be what it is. I'd like to think we've got a reputation of doing things. Well, we try and do things the right way, but when it's your kid playing, sometimes it's you think about. I overthink things. Certainly in the beginning, I'm stood there thinking, "Oh, he's not really contributing." Parents are probably saying he shouldn't be playing or whatever. But that's probably just my mindset, and that's me thinking things that aren't there. And it's
football's a game of opinions anyway. So you're going to be standing there. We could all be stood there, all of us as coaches, and I'll turn around to you, Tone, and go, "Alfie's having an absolute storming game." And then the other two coaches standing there going, "I'm not seeing it." So it's a game of opinions anyway. But the opinion that matters at that time is the guy that's picking the team, and we've all got broad shoulders, and we take the responsibility.
Yeah, it's easy. I think for when there's 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, we're big on equal playing time and fair playing time. They get into secondary school and they start to take things a little bit more seriously. It becomes more fair playing time based on their attitudes, training, etc. But we all try to make sure they play. And the most important thing for me now as a parent, when we come home, Alf will ask how he's done, and I'll give him my opinion how he's done. But he's always done. It's in the beginning. I did it probably quite abruptly, and quite matter of fact, which a 7-year-old don't need to hear. You didn't do this, you didn't do that, and I've changed into the. He'll probably tell you differently, but I think I've changed more. That I focus more on his positives as opposed to anything else. And for me, it's not just for him. And the age group that you and I coach, Harv, but for every kid in the club, if they haven't come away from football enjoying it, then we failed. Now, they could have, in grand scheme of things, not played very well or not played to their normal level. But if they come away happy, then reality, job done. They're doing it as a hobby. And I think as a parent coach, it took me a little while for my own lad to get that in my head, that he's got to enjoy it, because if they enjoy it, then that is it. That's the be all and end all of it for me. It doesn't matter what level you play at. You could be talking about a kid in an academy level. If they're not enjoying it, what's the point?
Yeah.
So it's 100%. got to be a hobby. It's got to be enjoyable, and then from there, just see where it takes you.
I think it'd be quite interesting, Jon-Jo's point of view on it, just because where half-time done, where you were more involved right at the start of things, and we've always said the 14s were like the probably the wrong way to put it, but the guinea pigs in terms of. We've learned as we've gone with them. Jon-Jo, where you're with the 8s, if I've done with the 7s, you obviously haven't had that. You've come into the club point. So, how starting point.
Well, it's they're completely different personalities that age. So if you think when you start with them at sort of under 7s as well, before that, it was only a couple of years before that they've only just started to actually talk and walk, and you take that for granted when they're on the football pitch and they've got a kit on, and you're talking about finding space and doing this, and sometimes I think you get carried away with trying to get the game across to them, where realistically they're just sort of they still ain't got a clue. And I think when I first started, particularly with Franklin, I was so exactly like Tony. I was so conscious about I must not come across bias. It's my first season. the first time doing it. I've got my kid in the team. I don't want to be the stereotypical, oh, look, he's only doing it because his boy's playing and he's going to be the striker and he won't, he's going to play every game. And so I did that was like the sort of thought process. And I went completely anti to it. And I'll probably say the first half of my first ever season with Franklin, looking back on it now, I was a lot harsher on him with the fact that if I had to make a quick in-game decision, so a kid's been hurt, it's got to come off, or a kid's got to go and goal because someone else ain't turned up, my port of call would be Franklin.
Yeah.
Because I knew I could deal with him personally after the game, rather than trying to take a bit of flack from a group of players who I don't even know properly. I've already seen him at training, but obviously I don't go around talking to him. I'm just, originally I was only going there to drop Franklin off. So you're trying to build a relationship with players whilst trying to maintain a father and son relationship. At the beginning, I really struggled to the point where I actually thought I was probably maybe hindering Franklin's development. Franklin started quite well when he was sort of doing reception and stuff like that. And he looked, he's looking like he was going to be a good player. But I think he went and he shouted a little bit. And I put that down to me slightly. I think that was the way I was dealing with it. So I learned from that, especially after doing my coaching course and stuff as well. I learned from that. I learned from my mistakes. And I think this year I've done it completely differently. And not only have we got within my side a really good sort of team spirit, Franklin's really come out of his shell as well. And his development over the last sort of 6 months has rocketed. And I think just little things, like Tony was saying, just little things like when you finish a game, Frank would always ask me, how do I do, Dad? Like, he's so wanting to please.
Yeah.
And before I used to go, well, you could have got your head up here, or, you need to use it. Straight away, you did that brilliantly, son, or I loved how you did that, or I loved how you did that. And the smile on his face, I don't need to tell him that he scored an own goal. He knows that.
You've got to remember you're a parent as well. That's the thing. So that's when you walk off that pitch, the first thing you've got to be as a parent, I think. And then you do the coaching after.
The other thing as well that I think is easy to forget about, generally, us as coaches will be the first at the game. So we're there setting goals up, putting flags out, putting barriers up, all of that, all of the stuff that people want to have there and should be there ready for a game. So me personally, I get there probably 45 minutes before everyone else is due to turn up. I'm there, I'm taking Alf. So my lad's there 45 minutes beforehand. He's helping set up, he's helping pack down. And I think a lot of the time, I certainly forget about it and don't think, from his point of view, Dad, I'm freezing, I want to go home. I want to be able to just walk straight off after the game like everyone else does. And then you're there breaking down, finishing off, talking to people. And sometimes I think it's easy to forget from the child's perspective how tough it is for them. So they've got, you as a parent asking their opinion from a coaching aspect. They've got you as the one setting up, packing away, dealing with questions after. They're sat in the car while you're talking to someone, or I'm talking to another coach about stuff. It's quite a big deal for them to deal with as well, I think. Not just from our point of view.
I think if you spent a season doing it in their shoes, I think you'll then realise, especially like you said about getting there early, and then some Saturdays we all help each other out. So even though I might not have a game till say 11 o'clock, but I'll still get down there at 9, help set up. The refs Grant's game, then Grant will ref my game. And, so you don't. Sometimes, like you say, kids turn up 20 minutes before a game. Whereas, you and your son been there for maybe up to an hour and a half, even 2 hours before a game. And, like I said, they just want to turn up, play football and go home. But I think most importantly as well, there's one thing I've sort of started to pick up on is they're sharing their dad.
Yeah.
And I think that is something you try to, especially at a young kid. So obviously when they're a bit older, you become like with Harv and Harry's relationship, you can see there, because Harry's a lot older, they're becoming like, they're good father and son, but they've got that sort of balance, sort of mate stuff. Whereas under 7s, under 8s, you've still got to be, he's a little boy and I'm his dad. So in his eyes, bizarrely enough, I'm his idol. Christ knows why. But
it's a good choice, though, Jon-Jo. It's a good choice.
But
Oh, we've lost Jon-Jo.
He's dropped off. I think Franklin hung up on him.
I do.
Franco's been like, I'll share you every day during the season, Dad. We're in lockdown.
I'm not sharing you with these boys. He's
on.
He's
exactly. But yeah, I think
he's back.
They're having to share their dad. It's quite hard for a young kid, especially when they're all trying to fight for your attention. You know, can I play here? Can I play here? Can I do this? Can I do that? You know, at the same time, he's trying to impress you as the coach, but then you've got to remember you've got to be, like Harvey said, you've got to be a parent as well.
I do think I think it's a really good point, Jon-Jo. And actually, when I look at little Jonesy, it probably naturally affects his behaviour. And sometimes when you're trying to talk to the kids, and your little 7-year-old just wants to talk to his dad, and it's difficult because sometimes I do feel, and you've all said this, if I look at how I am with the sevens and how I am with little man especially, as you've all said, I do think at times I come away thinking, God, have I treated him harshly there? The way I'll speak to him sometimes when I'm trying to speak to the whole team, and you feel like you're being a little bit over harsh with him, and how much playing time I'm giving him. And there was a moment, this was, I can't remember, a few months ago or whatever, and it's like Jon-Jo said, I've got 9 lads in that squad. We play 6 aside, and I'm picking the side when I'm on the way there thinking, right, what am I going to start with? And the easy decision is to leave your little lad out. But then when your little lad one morning on the way in the car goes, Daddy, why am I always sub? To start, you're like, it makes you think, Christ, if he's picking up on that now, that's not right. So yeah, it's tricky trying to how you manage it and how you balance it. It's hard. I love it, but I do find it incredibly stressful. I've got to be honest.
I don't think anyone would get it perfect. I think it's trial and error all the way through.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, we'll move on a little bit, and just this is more directed at you, Josh, because you sat there for the past 15 minutes. And Tom, to be fair, to everyone, but I want to focus it on you two more really. And it is a question. I think we had it from one of your parents, Tom. And what's the hardest part about moving from like the age group where you're changing from a pitch size? So you go from, I think we're under 10s at the moment. Next season we go to 9 aside, we're 7 aside. What's the hardest part that you find? We'll start with Josh.
For me, when I had are they under 11 still, Tom?
Yeah, going into 12s, yeah.
When I went up from 7 aside to 9 aside with them, it was finding the width on the pitch. Because they were used to a 7 aside pitch, so where they would have been edge of the pitch, now slap bang in the middle. Wingers sitting in centre midfield. I don't know, it's a weird one. With offsides as well, defensive line can be a struggle sometimes. But no, it wasn't really too difficult to work on anything.
Okay. Tom?
I don't know, the transition I've seen the most is the 5 to 7, with Jon-Jo, Duncan going through the 8s now. I think that's a really tough one, kind of psychologically for the players, because you've gone from a 5-a-side pitch where it's quite small, so you're half the size of a 7-a-side pitch roughly. Players are getting on the ball, a lot, again, a lot of touches throughout every game. And you go to 7-a-side, and no matter kind of what formation, whatever you're playing, the children have to get used to, I'm not always going to be involved. So if I'm going to be a forward, whereas at 5-a-side, you can go from goalkeeper to forward really quickly, because it's, the distances you're looking at maybe 20 yards. When you then go to 7-a-side, that could be 40, 50 yards to go from front to back as such. So players might not be involved as much, and it's quite difficult to maintain concentration, which is difficult for younger children anyway. And also kind of, I think they then start to interpret the game differently. And Harv and Duncan, you all said about when you go away from games, and you talked about that father-son relationship and how you break it down and your constructive criticism. I think then for any parent going away from it, then if you say to a child who's used to 5-a-side and you're going to 7, how did you sort of find it? How was the game? rather than being, I made loads of passes, I beat loads of players with a dribble, I scored loads of goals. It might be a case of a good game then becomes something completely different because you're involved less, and it's quite hard for them to understand that even though I haven't been the star in their mind, I've still played well, I've still had a good game. And maybe that's something we don't do very well in this country. I don't know. I know in different countries they play with even smaller formats than we do. You go to Belgium, I think they play like 2v2 and then 4v4 and then 6. No, it might be 6v6 and 8v8 or something like that, which might work slightly better. I don't know. But yeah, I think that's all.
5-a-side to 7-a-side, like the biggest step in size of pitch sizing. So when you go from 7 to 9-a-side, like the 7 to 9-a-side pitch, obviously the 9-a-side's bigger, but percentages wise, like I think
It's about double.
5-a-side pitch going to 7 is like the biggest step, isn't it? And
I think
when they're young, they're so used to playing that small-sided game, and everything becomes accustomed to them, don't it? That's their whole football experience is based on a tiny pitch from when they first started. And then all of a sudden, drop of a hat, you've got, double the size pitch. I noticed when we first started doing 7-a-side that actually you didn't know who was on a 7-a-side pitch. The whole game was still playing like it was on a 5-a-side pitch in the middle of the park.
That's
standing like North and South Pole.
I think Jon-Jo's hit the nail on the head, and Tom was alluding to it as well. I think when me and Tony started doing with the now 14s, it's the big issue is distances. That's where we found the difficulty. You're teaching lads to play in a certain way, sweeper keepers, keep the ball, be comfortable on the ball, move the ball, express yourself. And you're doing that on a little 5v5 pitch. And as then Jon-Jo said, you move them onto a 7v7 pitch, and he eloquently put, the game could still be on a 5v5 pitch because they're not utilising their space. So with our 14s, we got them playing some beautiful football on a smaller size pitch, and they were moving little 1-2s over tight areas. And I'm sure you remember this, Fletch, as well. When you went onto that bigger pitch, you wanted them to stretch the pitch. But getting that message through to them over opening up their distances and being comfortable, still playing football, moving the ball, recycling the ball, but playing over bigger areas was the tough bit, because you get it for a short period, but then all of a sudden everything would contract, and suddenly they'd be 4 or 5 players playing tight 1-2s in a tight area of space with huge amounts of open space in other places. And Tom, it's that lovely word that you used in that session that I now use with my little 7s, and it's helped them massively. And with my 8s, it's we want to be expansive. So it's teaching them to be expansive. You can still play that kind of football, but then expand out as well and stretch over the area.
Snap.
See, I quite liked it when I went from 9 to 11s, because of the way I set my team up. I was setting them up from the 9s to actually go, because I actually play with 3 at the back and 5 in the midfield, so that actually forces you to push yourself wide. And I think what else helped, this is not necessarily from a strategy point of view, you can get more players on the pitch. I know it sounds silly, but it reduces the amount of subs you've got to do. So making subs can destroy a game. You could be absolutely steamrolling a team. I mean, it happened to us a couple of times last season, and we changed the way we was doing things, and we ended up drawing a couple of games that we should have won. But the fact of the matter is, I think going to the not necessarily bigger pitches, but more players on the pitch, it definitely made mine and Justin's life easier. Obviously, coaches with me. And it suited the way we play a little more, because I think what I noticed especially, the way other teams play didn't change. They were still trying to fire long balls up the pitch. They weren't using the width and stuff like that. So that's where I think it was. I quite enjoyed going. I thought it was brilliant when we went from 9-a-side to 11-a-side. I think it made it so much easier for the way I liked my team to set up. And to be fair, I've got a lot of wide players, so it suited me.
Yeah. I think the way we all use quite common language now as well, and I probably have to give Harley Descala some credit, actually.
No. But,
stop.
Get him off.
He brought in your favourite words, mate. So Harley was the first.
No.
To come
Don't
out.
give him credit.
The
whole that's Harley.
Elastic band thing. So the stretch
corners.
which we all kind of have used at some point, I'm sure, which is great. You know, when we get the ball and Dunk's about being expansive, and we're expecting players to go as wide and high and make as much space as possible. That probably does make things at the very start when you go from 5 to 7, 7 to 9, probably makes things actually a bit more difficult. In terms of result, things like that, because teams find it quite easy to nick the ball off you. Obviously, when we get it, and in the long term, it's exactly how the game should be played. And when you get it, it works, and it's amazing. But that probably makes things quite difficult as well. When you go 7 to 9, your distances, again, like Dunk said earlier, you're looking at going from maybe a 8-10 yard pass to being 15, 18 yards. So to play a basic pass sometimes. So that obviously players haven't got the strength maybe to be able to play that. I mean, you look at smaller players, generally they haven't got the capability to be able to play that pass yet. So actually, although it's the right thing to do, it can be a real struggle trying to get that through, to keep doing it, because they keep making that mistake, if you know what I mean, because they physically can't do it. I would say that's what it is as well.
I think we forget about the physical demands as well when we move up sizes.
Yeah, I think you do, especially getting across the pitch.
We're telling them to stretch, snap.
I've got another one with it all. Sorry, Josh. I've got another one with all this, and it relates as well to moving from the 5 to 7 as well. Is I forgot how difficult it was with the youngsters, especially the little 7s, on them learning positions on a football pitch. Now, you just want them to go out and play football and enjoy himself. That's all you want, and you want them on the ball. But it brings home the Harry thing again with being in goal, where they all need to learn to play in different positions. It's so easy when you first start out. You will, with the little group of 7s, work out right who can be the little quarterback at the back, who can defend to help us, and then get things triggered. But what happens is you fall into the habit of, whenever you're playing or picking the side, you put those players in those positions. Then you get little Johnny or little Billy coming up to you and say, "Can I go up front this week? Can I go right midfield? Can I go left midfield? Can I be Magic Man?" And you think, actually, do you know what? Yeah, you've always played there or there. So, yeah, have a go there. And it was the game down at Battle, I think Arv was with me. And I said to him, right, you've always played there, so where do you want to play? And you let them pick where they wanted to go on the pitch. And you make that assumption that they know their positional sense. And then you send them out onto the pitch. And, yeah, your centre forward standing on your goal line, and your right wingers actually standing centre back next to his mate, and it's so challenging. And it's the same when you move to 5v7, because you're asking a lad, right, we want you to play left midfield, but left midfield on a 7v7 pitch is a hell of a lot different to left midfield on a 5v5 pitch. And if that positional sense comes apart, then the whole way the side playing breaks down massively, and it's even more evident at an older age group. But with the little ones especially, it's that balance, letting them have fun, letting them play where they want to play, but then trying to keep a structure. And you do sometimes, when you give them those games where they play where they want to play, you look at the sidelines and think, what parents must think that I'm doing here? They must think I've lost the plot. But I
think we're quite lucky with a lot of our parents, though, Dunk. I think they try to get what we're trying to achieve. But do you know, I'd like to make one point with the older age group as well. We're all talking about how we've coached, how we've done this. Do you want me to? One of the biggest things I noticed when I took over the team was we put so much emphasis on what we do when we have the ball. We forgot to do what we didn't teach them what to do when we don't. And that is also a massive part of the game. A huge part of the game. He stopped the other team scoring. And that's where the foundation of some of the greatest teams in the world have built on. Just do not let the other team score. And it's as simple as that. I mean, when I first started with the guys, they won the ball. That's fantastic. But as soon as they lost it, didn't know what they was doing.
I think that's one of the hardest things to do in training as well, isn't it? Because obviously when you have training sessions during the week, you're trying to do so much on the ball time, because you've got a limit. You've got an hour or 2 hour a week, whatever. You're trying to get as many touches of the ball as possible. to try and get their developing. But trying like you say, trying to coach what to do without the ball is probably the most difficult thing to do. To be fair, isn't it?
It's shape and position, isn't it?
And every kid just wants to get the ball at their feet and smash it to the bins, don't they? But
100%.
obviously,
I think you have to. We did it with the 8s, Jon-Jo, last year, didn't we? Do you remember at the end of last year we called it Fight with Friends? So we actually we used the.
I've seen Jon-Jo's team do that. Already
They
take it literally.
The carrot of if you do this correctly, if you do this in the best way you can, it's going to lead to scoring goals. So actually, we coached the defensive topic kind of backwards in that sense and sort of said, well, if you want to score more goals, which you obviously do, this is a great way to do it. And actually, that was probably the best way to coach in younger age groups. Just quickly before we move on, Brad, I would say that one of the biggest things I mentioned is goalkeepers, and that makes me happy as well. In terms of, I think the older you get and the more you move through the formats, the goalkeeper's role changes
massively.
I think if it's something that's overlooked a lot, if you don't work on a goalkeeper technically and tactically, 5 to 7, 7 to 9, especially then when you go to 9 to 11, it completely, especially where we try and play, it can completely, put an end to everything in the way you're trying to play if it doesn't work.
Well, what I was doing as well, because we was watching when we first started, and we was watching other teams, and we went to that 11-side big goals. I was just telling my team, rightly or wrong, as soon as you get around that 18-yard box, just shoot, because the keepers, a lot of them, had not been coached, and they're still quite small. I mean, now they're under 14s. It's slightly different because the keepers have got bigger, taller, and stronger. But I think when you make that first transition, the only bit of advice I'd say is tell your players to shoot on sight pretty much, because Tom's right. The goalkeeping side of things does get missed.
I think especially at a younger age, some people think, the person who gets tarnished as the goalkeeper was like the worst in the team. And that, I think we, as a culture now, we've come away from that. And especially in our age group, like on the Sunday side, we've got young Monty Gudgeon playing goal for the Sunday team. His ability out on pitch is so good. Yet when he does go into goal, he rarely uses his hands. He doesn't need to. I mean, don't get me wrong, he uses some fantastic saves, but the amount of times like the defenders will pass the ball back to Monty, and he can, deal with it and get the ball out of his feet and play it back out again. That's where you see it working really, really well. And I think a lot of the teams we play against, the goalie is there just to be the ball kicked at him. And I think what I really like about what everyone does at this club is the fact that we're not saying the goalie's job's just to stand there and jump in front of a football. Why can't a goalie go and start an attack?
Yeah,
why can't he be, like you say, sweeper keeper, be on the edge of the box, make a tackle, play it to his right back, transition and go again.
It absolutely remains one of my pet hates, in that I think everyone does it differently. We're not saying we're right or anyone's wrong, but we play sweeper keepers. And when I've been at certain games with the 7s, the 8s, whatever age group, and I can remember in particular, but I won't mention it, what age group it was, where you've got your keeper up and he's sweeping and we're recycling back, and it's brilliant. And their approach was to get their centre forward to go and stand behind my keeper. So my keeper was sweeping.
But that's fine. Let him do it.
Yeah, but then it's frustrating because it's not helping our lads psychologically, because it's difficult. I'm telling my keeper, I want you up. I don't care if he's standing on the edge of your box and you're further up the pitch than he is. If it goes over your head and he scores, that's on me, not on his. And it works. We sweep, we play, we recycle. But then that one instant did happen where the ball gets kicked over his head, goes through to that lad who barely touched it before it crossed the line. And I look at my little keeper and you can see he's almost heartbroken because he's conceded a goal because he thinks he's not dealt with the man behind him. And it's all well and good me saying to him, it's okay, we don't care about that. But you do worry about the impact it's having on them, especially when you've got the opposition running up and down the touchline. They've just won the FA Cup final because they've managed to hoof the ball from their goalie over my keeper's head through to their little centre forward who's standing on the 6-yard box, who actually has barely touched the ball before it crossed the line. Now
that's coaching, isn't it? That's down to us.
It's difficult to balance.
Yeah, but that's down to us, and which I think we've done quite well, Dunk, especially over the years. sticking to your convictions,
Yeah.
believing that it'll come. And even, I mean, my 14s this year have had a real tough year, and a number of the
Apart
boys
from
have seen
January.
them play. But we've been in games, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we'll concede 2, 3, 4, and then they come back into games, and that's a confidence thing, and that's
a mentality thing.
like Harv mentioned earlier. That's learning the defensive side of the game better, and that's down as a coach. I look at I take responsibility for that. I've always coached my group. Can we be better with the ball? Can we play out in tight areas? Can we be brave to play across your own box and stuff like that? And that's one of the things. You go from pitch size changes. You want your keeper to play to your defender or into midfield. Take responsibility, be brave with the ball. You can't then turn around and go, well, hang on a minute, the pitch has doubled. My centre half can't knock a ball 20 yards instead of 10. And then the opposition pick it up and score. Whose fault's that? That ain't the kids' fault. They're all learning. And it's just, I think the other thing we haven't mentioned as well, we've all covered the pitch size changes. We haven't covered the time duration changes. So you've got kids that are growing physically, growing mentally, and they're playing from 20 minutes a half, 30 minutes a half, 35, 40 until we get up to the adult side of it. It's a big difference. And we forget that, I think. And that's, you want a concentration level. We all look for performance. We all look for commitment and attitude. But kids get tired. Kids have different things on their mind. What's happening at home, at school, we don't know that. It's being patient with it, and I think what Dunk mentioned just now was completely valid. And there's been loads of times you're trying to play a certain way, and all of a sudden the opposition will just do something that completely messes up what you're trying to do. But you've got then as a group got to counter that, and you've got to be strong enough to stick with what you're trying to do. And that's football, though, isn't it? It's an invasion game. It's a tactical game in terms of can we have a better tactic, whether that be we're better with the ball or better without it, whether it would be we play longer or we play shorter, it doesn't really matter. Stick with your conviction and work with it. And that's another thing. We ask all our volunteer coaches that come in, all our parents to sign up to our club way of thinking and way we want to play. And one thing I'm really proud of is you can go and watch any of our teams play to varying levels of ability. They all try and play the same way. They'll all try and play out from the back. They'll all try and play through the thirds. Yeah, some do it better than others. But that's natural. That is life. Some have got slightly more ability with it, but everyone tries to do the same thing. And you've got coaches that come in, some coaches that have played or have got a football experience, other coaches that just do it because someone needs to take a team and have never coached before, never played before, and they all try and do what we ask them to do. They all give up their time to do it, and I think that gets taken for granted a little bit at times.
Yeah.
I look at certain, we've got some parents that coach, and it's easy to go, well, he ain't doing that. He shouldn't be doing that. It's so easy to say it from afar. And it's, I think, well, we're lucky as a club. I think we have a pretty good group of parents throughout the club. But there is, it's fair play to anyone who steps up and volunteers. Fair play to them. That for me is they're worth their weight in gold. Brad, crack on, son.
Well, I was just going to say before we move on, just about the whole thing of playing out from the back and stuff like that. Personally, from my team this year, you say about it having an effect on them, because I've always wanted my guys to play out from the back as we do. But this year, you've really started to see that if we do lose the ball and we do concede, it's starting to have more of a effect on them. So where it was like 7s, 8s, I thought they just sort of the goal goes in. They're like, oh, well, I'm like, well, come on, guys. That's how I want you to play this season. If that happens, they start to get annoyed with each other. They're like, right, come on, we need to be better. We need to do this. And it's just seeing that whole progression. And I ref quite a few of Brandon's games, and Brandon plays 9-a-side and we're 7-a-side at the moment. And it's just that moving from 7 to 9, I'm standing on the pitch reffing it and I'm thinking, I can't believe my boys are going to be playing on a pitch this big next season. And already you look at it and you're going, there's so much space on this pitch. And
it starts to look proper football, doesn't it?
It does. It's like men's football. You see them putting their offside flags up and thinking, my boys are playing offside next season. What's that about? I was like, I remember when they're tiny and they're literally just kicking the ball around for fun and having a shot and it goes out for a throw.
Stop the centre forward standing behind a goalkeeper annie
That was easier to coach than I expected because they all play FIFA. So I expected dealing with. I mean, you're going to get quite a bit of it, but I expected trying to get the kids to understand offside to be really tough. It's actually pretty straightforward because they get it. They watch so much football on telly. They play FIFA. Yeah, it was a lot simpler than I expected.
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll mess it up, mate. So
I also like Jon-Jo's point on the goalkeepers as well. We've definitely come away from, even when I was playing, that you just, like he said about putting the worst player in goal and stuff like that. In my league this season, the amount of teams that have like decent goalkeepers who, when you turn up to a game, there's a coach doing drills with goalkeeper, and then there's a coach taking the rest of the team. And we played against like teams like Hastings, Settlescombe, Ringmer this season, where they have a dedicated coach just for goalkeeping, and it makes such a difference. And it's just moved on so much from the last few years, I think, where you used to just have a kid in goal and he'd just stand there and be like, "Oh, I've got my gloves on."
Yeah.
And
John, I'm going to jump in front of a ball, mate.
So, yeah, but moving on, although we're already 50 minutes through this, as time has flown. Jon-Jo and Harv, we asked this question last week. What would be your greatest footballing achievement yourself and as a coach? So I'll start with, go on, Jon-Jo. I can see your beautiful face.
It's in the go.
Best football achievement. Probably the one what sticks out most was I went on tour to Holland with Brighton. I was under 14s at the time, which is the equivalent of sort of like their ID centre now. And we went to this tournament, and when we played, it was over 3 days, I think. We played sort of like 4 or 5 games a day, and we was getting pummeled 6-0, 8-0, 9-0. We was playing all these little Dutch teams, teams from Germany. Vitesse Arnhem was one of the teams, an Ajax team, which is, I think Ajax beat us like 14-0. But on the last day, on the Sunday, obviously we had no chance of going through. We didn't even have a goal or a point. But on the last game, I was made captain for the game, and we won 1-0, and I scored a toe poke from outside the box, and it was the best feeling of my life. And we celebrated like we won the tournament, and we had all these European teams basically laughing at us because we were celebrating so much, but we just didn't care. The fact that we actually scored after being sort of done over 14-0 every other game was probably, as sad as it sounds, my greatest achievement.
You do know that. Don't count, mate. You do know that, right?
It did then, mate. 3 days of being absolutely drunk. I'm taking a toe poke from Tony there. Left foot as well.
Nah.
Yeah, the mighty left foot.
Easy when you're not
But probably in game, that was one that sticks out maybe. Other than that. Scoring the first ever goal for Pass+Move in the men's season. That's decent.
Franco's got a high standard to reach, isn't he? Bless him.
At least one name will go down in history. The first ever competitive goal scored.
No,
All I'm going to say, Jon-Jo, this season's been annulled, mate, so it don't count.
Yeah, say it don't count.
Thank God for that.
First one next season then, mate.
Do you want me to go with my achievement or carry on with Jon-Jo?
Go on. Jon-Jo's left anyway.
Right, this is probably a bit of a weird one actually, because when I played when I was younger and everything else, I'm getting on in years now. I've played in finals, I've won leagues, I've played at Stamford Bridge and all these type of things. But I think probably one of my biggest achievements, or one of the things that I turn around and say that really drove me in football, was coming back from a double leg break at 44. I was told that I'd never play again, and that was just like a red rag to a bull. I'm not saying I'm playing, but I'm still getting around the pitch. I'd probably say that was probably one of my biggest achievements in football, was being told at 44 you'll never play again because of your injury. And I just worked hard to try and get myself back fit again and play some games. I think I played my first game back 5 months after the break, which I should never have done.
Got sin bin?
I didn't in that game, not with a broken leg. That was actually out in Italy. I played that game. My first game back actually was in Turin. So there you go. That's an achievement. And then I took the rest of the season out and then started again in September. But I'd probably say at 44, getting a double leg break that would finish any professional's career pretty much, and then coming back and being able to play again. I think that's probably one of my biggest achievements as a player.
Yeah, that's fair play, to be fair. I'll give you that one.
Cheers, mate.
Jon-Jo, as a coach?
As a coach, oh crikey! As a coach, I've got loads of like little memories I pick up on. Probably proudest moment, I would probably say, well, the highlight that sticks out the most was probably the Bognor tournament. And we had sort of the bare minimum players in the squad. So we had a lot of games and obviously had no subs. And to get all the way through to the semi-final, after the first day, I think we didn't have a great first day. And then the second day, on the sort of Sunday morning, we won 3 or 4 games on the bounce and playing some fantastic football. Got to the semis and unlucky, got beat in the semis. But then to get the sportsmanship trophy as well, and just have so many other coaches come up to us and say sort of, well deserved, the boys and the way we played and the sportsmanship from all of them were brilliant. And to hear so many positive comments from people to say, how bizarrely how well behaved they were on and off the pitch, and just generally how we were trying to play, and like I said, the sportsmanship wise, that was nice to hear, knowing that other people looking on it from outside and going, look, they're playing nice football and they've got a good team spirit, and they're respecting your position and respecting the ref. To hear that and to then get sort of some sort of trophy for it, I suppose was quite nice. That probably sticks out the most. But we scored some fantastic goals as well. And the amount of times I look at some of the gameplay we've done, especially our Sunday side as well this year, don't we? We've scored some amazing goals, and you just stand back and think, crikey!
What do they say? Good players make coaches redundant.
You can stand there, you think they're 8 years old.
You go and coach that under-8 side at sometimes, and you don't really have to do anything. You just sit back and just smile and enjoy it, and it's just a pleasure. It really is, absolute pleasure. But you can say that about the age groups as well.
Well, exactly. But I think one what sticks out the most is probably that Bognor tournament or the Canberra tournament as well. We got runners up on that. That was good days football.
Yes, mate. Proudest moment, without a shadow of a doubt, and I've bored everyone with his story so many times, was last year's cup final. Without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, it's all about, I think like Jon-Jo said there about the fair play and everything else. But if I'll try and get through the story as quick as we can.
You'll choke me up here.
We was playing in a cup final. The opposition, who shall remain nameless, basically went through the programme notes and picked out all of the players, and then went onto the website to check whether they was eligible to be playing in the cup final. There you had to play a minimum of 2 games in the cup run. I had a league official about 20 minutes into the game pull me to the sideline and just turn and say, if you play young Riley, then you're going to have to forfeit the cup. If you win the cup and you play him, you'll have to forfeit the cup. So we didn't tell the players, Justin and I, we just carried on in the game. Got to half time, and I just said to it, I got all the players knelt down, and I said, look, guys, this is the situation. If I put Riley on the pitch, whether we win this game 10-0 or not, we forfeit the cup. And basically every player just stepped forward and said he plays. He's one of the team, and that's the end of it. So that's probably my proudest moment, because it showed that they were just willing to fight for each other as a team. But I'm all getting choked up about it now, but it was absolutely outstanding. And I think that epitomises us, what we try and be about, that we're all in together. So as a coach, that's it, hands down. And I think that'll take some beating. I don't think I'll ever have a better moment than that in my coaching career. Best retire, really. But yeah, that was it.
That's lovely, Harv.
Thank you very much.
A tear in my eye.
Good.
No, we've got a couple of sort of odd questions to end with, like general questions that we got from Instagram. The first one, everyone, it is, what is your favourite all-time song?
Easy.
We're gonna go Jon-Jo then. Go on, John, just kick us off.
Anything from Oasis.
Oh.
Anything from Oasis.
No specific
Oasis.
song.
You don't have a specific song?
No.
Slide Away.
Oh, wait, me and Jon-Jo have the same song. Me and Jon-Jo have got the same song. Unreal from you.
Yeah, it's an absolute banger. I love that song.
Love that song so much. Josh?
Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here.
Oh, I knew that was coming. That's a tune.
You like Pink Floyd, Josh?
Yeah, I've been corrupted by my father.
Tom?
Yeah, never understood them.
Oh, favourite song ever?
Mario, Let Me Love You.
This is a really odd one, but I'm the same as you, Josh. On my parents, probably Doctor Hook, Sylvia's mother.
Everyone's just gone blank.
Exactly.
Google that.
Old school, mate.
Is that from Peter Pan?
I'm keeping there.
He's playing Assassin's Creed, I think.
Oh, me? You're talking to me?
Said your name about 10 times now.
Someday My Prince Will Come by Miles Davis. There you go.
Don't know. Can you sing it?
Tone?
Neil Diamond, Forever in Blue Jeans. A lot of time for Neil Diamond.
Neil Diamond.
Absolute karaoke classic.
Of?
Shades of Rhythm, Fletch. Go on, say it.
Oh, sorry, it weren't me. Shades of Rhythm's got to be up there, but I probably would say this is a total one out there. There's probably only Duncan will probably know it, and that's Mr. Bojangles by Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, big man.
Mr. Bojangles.
There you go.
Nice.
What a song.
Well, that'll do us on the
Quality,
questions. So, I don't know, has anyone else got anything lovely they'd like to say?
Well done, Josh. Well done,
No.
mate.
Fab. Cheers, boys.
All right.
All right, then. Well, we'll leave it there.
Stay at home.
Yeah, stay safe.
Stay
Yeah, all right. Thanks for listening or watching if you're on YouTube to our second podcast. A big thank you to our guests, Harvey Fletcher and Jon-Jo Wright. Woo!
Good to see you, boys.
As ever, thank you for the five of us, Tone, Dunk, Tom, Josh. Thank you for joining me. Yeah, we're looking to do one of these on a sort of weekly basis while this is all going on. It'll be out every Monday, so just stay tuned for that. And then once this is all over, eventually we'll be looking to do it on a monthly basis. So
We'd have run out of material by then, mate. I feel like we might have done already. So.
no, we've got those. I've got those.
Scraping the barrel of guests already.
So thank you very much, everyone, for listening and watching.
We need to do a podcast, Tone.
Me and you, Fletch, I think.
Yeah.
Just you two.
Yeah, it might need to be a bit adult rated, mate, I think, if me and you are doing it.
I'll join.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Cheers, boys. All the best.
Bye,
Stay
guys.
safe.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.